"Get on your knees and clean my shoes," the fiancé told the maid's toddler. Then the billionaire walked in. Everyone thought she was just the maid's child. Until one moment changed everything. She was 3 years old, barefoot, wearing a faded yellow dress that had been washed so many times the color had almost disappeared. Her mother scrubbed floors in a mansion worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. And nobody, not one single guest at that glamorous party, thought this tiny girl mattered. Then she walked in. Fiancée, beautiful on the outside, frozen solid on the inside. She looked down at that little girl with cold, sharp eyes and said words no child should ever hear. And for a moment, it seemed like nothing would happen. Like the little girl would just bow her head and disappear. But then the door opened, and the billionaire walked in. What he witnessed in the next 60 seconds changed every single life in that room forever. Hey, welcome back everyone. If this is your first time here, I am so glad you found this channel. We tell stories here that reach straight into your chest and squeeze. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? I love seeing all the different places you're joining from around the world. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. It takes 2 seconds, and I promise, the stories we have coming will absolutely wreck you in the best possible way. Now stay with me until the very end of today's story, because the final twist? I'm not exaggerating when I say it will leave you completely speechless. Alright, let's go. Nobody in that mansion ever looked at Rosa twice, but her daughter noticed everything. Her name was Rosa, 31 years old, single mother. Originally from a small coastal town where the fishing boats went out before sunrise and came back smelling like salt and hard work. She had her daughter Lily at 28, alone, scared, and more determined than anyone had a right to be. Rosa had been working as a live-in maid at the Callaway estate for 2 years. The estate sat on the edge of the city like something out of a dream. Iron gates, marble staircases, fountains that ran even in winter. Inside, every surface gleamed. That was Rosa's doing. Every morning she was up before 5, on her knees with a cloth, making things beautiful that no one thanked her for. She didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. Lily was her entire reason for every single thing she did. Lily, 3 years old, with wild dark curls and enormous brown eyes that seemed to take in the whole world at once. She was a quiet child. Not shy exactly, more like observant. She watched everything. The way sunlight moved across the marble floor. The way the crystal chandeliers threw tiny rainbows on the ceiling. The way her mother's hands moved, scrubbing, polishing, folding with such tired grace. Rosa had worked out a small routine. During working hours, Lily would stay in the tiny room off the kitchen. Their room, with her stuffed rabbit, her coloring books, and the small second-hand keyboard Rosa had found at a charity shop 3 months ago. That keyboard. Rosa almost hadn't bought it. $20 felt like $20 she didn't have. But Lily had pressed one key, just one, and looked up at her mother with an expression so pure and full of wonder that Rosa had handed over the money before she'd even made a decision. That was 3 months ago. Since then, Lily played every single day. Rosa didn't think much of it at first. Toddlers like sounds. It was normal. But lately, she'd noticed something. Lily wasn't just pressing random keys. She was listening, repeating, adjusting, playing small sequences over and over until they sounded the way she wanted them to. It made Rosa's chest feel tight in a way she couldn't explain. She told herself it was nothing. She was wrong. The night of the party, Rosa had been briefed 3 days in advance. Mr. Ethan Callaway, 32 years old, billionaire, founder of a global tech empire, was hosting an engagement celebration. His fiancée, Vanessa Hartwell, 28, had personally designed the guest list, the menu, the floral arrangements, and the dress code. She had also, very pointedly, told Rosa exactly where Lily was allowed to be. The kitchen, the service hallway, your room. Vanessa had looked at Rosa with the particular boredom of someone who has never had to worry about anything. The guests shouldn't have to see the help's personal situation. Rosa had nodded, kept her face neutral, went back to polishing silver. That night she set up Lily's corner in their small room. A little blanket nest, some crackers, a juice box, the stuffed rabbit, and kissed her daughter on the forehead. "You stay here, my love. Mama has to work." "Okay." Lily nodded seriously, clutching her rabbit. Rosa went back to work. She didn't know that a door had been left unlatched. Have you ever had to keep the most important part of your life hidden? Can you imagine what Rosa felt every day, walking those marble floors? Vanessa had planned every detail of that evening, but she hadn't planned for a 3-year-old. By 8 o'clock, the mansion was alive. 40 guests, champagne glasses catching candlelight, a string quartet in the corner of the grand ballroom playing something elegant and forgettable, women in jewels, men in suits that cost more than Rosa made in 6 months. Ethan Calloway moved through his own party the way he moved through most things, with quiet presence. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. At 32 he had built something extraordinary, but he wore it lightly. Dark eyes, calm face, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Vanessa, meanwhile, was radiant and sharp and working the room like a performance. She laughed at the right moments, touched the right arms, directed catering staff with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Rosa moved silently between the guests, refilling glasses, collecting plates, invisible in the way she had trained herself to be. And then she heard a sound that stopped her heart. Small footsteps. She turned, and there was Lily, standing at the entrance of the ballroom. Wild curls, faded yellow dress, enormous eyes taking in all the light and color and music with absolute wonder. Her stuffed rabbit hung from one small fist. Rosa moved fast, but not fast enough. Vanessa spotted Lily first. The music didn't stop. The guests didn't notice. But Vanessa's expression shifted, from polished smile to something colder, harder, in the space of half a second. She walked to Lily with her heels clicking on the marble like a countdown. She crouched down, not kindly the way you crouch for a child, but in that particular way of someone making a point. "And what?" Vanessa said quietly, her voice like ice under velvet. "Do you think you're doing in here?" Lily looked up at her with those big, honest eyes. "I heard the music," she said simply. Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Irritation, contempt, and something else, something uglier underneath. She looked at Lily's worn little shoes, her faded dress, the stuffed rabbit. Then she looked at the marble floor beneath Lily's feet. And she said it. "Get on your knees and clean my shoes." The room near them was still full of chatter and music. Nobody heard it. Nobody except Rosa, who had just stepped into the doorway, cloth still in hand, and went completely, terrifyingly still. Lily stared up at Vanessa. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just looked at this woman, this tall, glittering, cold woman, with an expression that was far too old for a 3-year-old's face. And softly, very softly, she said, "Why?" It was such a simple word. Such a pure word. "Oui." Vanessa blinked. For just one moment, one single moment, something in her face faltered, as if the word had reached somewhere unexpected. Then her expression hardened again. Because that's what. The voice came from the doorway behind Rosa. Very, very still. Everyone in the immediate area turned. Ethan Calloway stood in the entrance to the ballroom. He had come from his study, looking for Vanessa to begin the formal toast. Instead, he had walked in on something else entirely. His dark eyes moved from Vanessa's face, to the tiny girl on the floor, to Rosa standing frozen in the doorway with her hands pressed white, knuckled around a polishing cloth. Nobody spoke. The string quartet played on, oblivious. Ethan looked at his fiancée. "What," he said quietly, "is happening here? What would you have done in that moment? If you were Ethan? If you were Rosa? Have you ever witnessed someone treat a child that way and felt that helpless rage?" Ethan asked a simple question. But the answer was going to unravel everything he thought he knew about the woman he was about to marry. Vanessa recovered quickly. She was good at that, reassembling the polished surface within seconds. She straightened, touched her hair, and gave Ethan the smile she had perfected over years of navigating rooms full of powerful people. "Darling," the maid's child wandered in. "I was simply explaining that she needs to go back where she belongs." Ethan didn't return the smile. His gaze went to Lily. Lily was still standing exactly where she'd been. She hadn't moved an inch. She was looking up at Ethan now with those enormous, searching eyes. Not afraid exactly. Curious. Measuring. He crouched down to her level. It was the same gesture Vanessa had made minutes before, but completely different in every possible way. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Lily said back. "What's your name?" "Lily." "That's a beautiful name." "Oz. Are you okay?" Lily considered this seriously, the way only very young children can, with total, unfiltered honesty. "She wanted me to clean her shoes," Lily said. "But I don't know how. And also I'm 3. Something happened in Ethan's face. Moved through too fast to catch. Pain maybe. Or recognition. He stood up slowly and turned to look at Rosa, who was still standing in the doorway, mortified, terrified, lips pressed together. "Is this your daughter?" "Yes, sir. I'm so sorry. I had her in our room, the door must have." "Don't apologize." His voice was quiet but firm. He looked at Rosa for a long moment. Then he looked back at Lily, who was now studying him with the same calm, ancient attention she gave to the chandeliers and the marble rainbows. Then he looked at Vanessa. Here is the thing about Ethan Calloway that nobody at that party knew. That almost nobody knew. He had not grown up in mansions. His mother had cleaned houses. Not this house. Other houses. Different cities, different families, the same endless work. He had grown up watching her wake before dawn and come home after dark, watching her hands get rough and her back get bent, watching her smile at people who never once learned her name. He had built his company from a rented room and a second-hand laptop. He had promised himself when the money came that he would never forget where he had come from. He had told Vanessa this story once, early on. She had called it inspiring. Now, looking at her face, the way she was standing, the faint residue of contempt still hovering around her eyes as she looked at Lily, he felt something cold move through him. Had she listened to that story at all? Had she heard it? "Vanessa," he said, "I need a moment with you. Privately." Vanessa's smile sharpened just slightly. "Of course, darling. Should we?" "Rosa." He turned back to the doorway. "Please, take Lily to the main sitting room. Make sure she has whatever she needs." Rosa blinked. The main sitting room. Not the kitchen. Not the service hallway. Yes, of course." He nodded once. And then he walked, calmly, quietly, toward the corridor that led to his study. And after a moment Vanessa followed. The ballroom hummed on around them. Nobody had noticed anything. But Rosa had noticed everything. She looked down at her daughter. Lily was looking up at her. "Is the man nice?" Lily asked. Rosa's throat tightened. "I think so, baby," she whispered. "I think so." She took Lily's hand and walked her toward the sitting room, through corridors that Rosa usually only traveled with a mop and a bucket. And for the first time in 2 years, she felt like she might be allowed to exist in this house. What she didn't know yet was what was happening behind the closed door of Ethan's study. What was said there. What was decided. And what Ethan was about to discover. Not tonight, but soon. About the small, quiet little girl who had walked into his ballroom in a faded yellow dress. Have you ever had a moment where you saw someone's true character all at once, and couldn't unsee it? That moment when the mask just slips. Rosa tried to keep Lily calm and quiet in the sitting room. She had no idea that in 10 minutes, everything would change. The main sitting room was a different world. Rosa had cleaned it hundreds of times, but she had never sat in it. Never let Lily touch anything in it. The furniture was pale cream and gold. A grand fireplace. Tall bookshelves. And in the corner, something that made Lily stop walking mid-step. A grand piano. Black. Gleaming. Enormous. Lily stared at it the way other children stared at Christmas trees. "Mama," she breathed. "No, baby. Don't touch." "But Mama." "Lily." Rosa crouched to her level, holding her small shoulders gently. "We are guests right now. Okay? Important guests. We need to be very, very good. So we sit nicely and we don't touch anything." Lily's eyes remained locked on the piano, but she nodded. She sat down on the edge of a cream-colored sofa, rabbit in lap, and watched the piano the way you watch something you love from a distance. Rosa exhaled. She sat beside her daughter and stared at the fire. From somewhere deep in the house, she could hear the muffled sound of voices. She couldn't make out words. She didn't know what was happening between Ethan and Vanessa. She only knew that in the morning, very possibly, she would be packing their belongings into the one large duffel bag they owned. She closed her eyes. Please, she thought, to no one in particular. Please. She must have drifted, just slightly, because when she opened her eyes, the room had gone very quiet. A turn. Lily was not on the sofa. Lily was at the piano. She wasn't banging on it. She wasn't laughing or making noise. She was sitting on the edge of the bench, her small feet not even reaching the floor, with her tiny hands resting on the keys. And she was playing. Actually playing. Not random notes. Not a child's chaotic percussion. Melody. It was simple, 3 notes repeating, building, but it was shaped. It had intention. It rose and fell with something that felt impossibly like feeling. Rosa sat forward. She had heard Lily playing on the little keyboard. She had heard the repetition, the adjusting, the listening. She had told herself it was nothing special, that she was a biased mother seeing genius in ordinary things. She was not prepared for this. The melody shifted. 4th note. 5th. Pattern grew. The room seemed to hold its breath. Rosa's eyes filled with tears and she genuinely didn't know why, except that something in the music reached directly into her chest and pressed against a place she usually kept locked. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched her 3-year-old daughter play. Ethan heard it from the hallway. He had just come from his study, the conversation with Vanessa still sitting in his chest like something unresolved. He had walked the long way back to the ballroom, past the sitting room, and stopped, because there was music coming from behind the door. Not the string quartet. Something else. Something quieter. Something that made him stop walking entirely. He pushed the door open, and he saw Lily, 3 years old, feet dangling, wild curls, eyes closed, playing his grandmother's piano like she had been doing it her whole life. He stood in the doorway for a long time. Rosa saw him first. She startled, began to stand to apologize, and he held up one hand. "Don't stop her." He shook his head. "Please don't stop her." So Rosa sat back down. And the 3 of them stayed there. Billionaire in the doorway, Maid on the sofa, 3-year-old at the grand piano, while the music filled the room like something that had been waiting to get out. When Lily finally stopped, she opened her eyes. She looked at the piano for a moment. Then she looked up and saw Ethan. "Sorry," she said in her small, serious voice. "Did I touch something I wasn't supposed to?" Ethan walked into the room and sat down on the bench beside her. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. Lily held up her stuffed rabbit. "I practice with Bunny. On a piano. On my small one. Mama got it for me." He paused. "I like big ones better." Ethan looked at Rosa. Rosa was looking at her hands. How long has she been playing? He asked. 3 months, Rosa said quietly. Silence. 3 months, he repeated. He looked back at Lily. Lily looked back at him with those enormous, honest eyes. He reached out carefully and played a short sequence of notes. Simple scale. Lily watched. Then she played it back. He tried a slightly more complex sequence. She played it back. He played something harder, something it took most students months to get right. She listened with her whole body. Then she played it back. Not perfectly, but almost. She adjusted one note, tried again, got it. Ethan Callaway, a man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals and spoken in front of thousands, sat in silence for a long moment. Then he looked at Rosa. Your daughter, he said carefully, is not ordinary. Rosa looked up. Her eyes were bright. I know, she whispered. When was the last time something small and beautiful completely stopped you in your tracks? Do you believe some gifts are just born in people? Vanessa had watched everything from the hallway. And instead of being moved, she made a decision that sealed her fate. She had been standing just outside the sitting room door. Vanessa had followed Ethan from the study. She hadn't liked how that conversation ended, hadn't liked the quiet way he had listened to her without giving anything back, and she'd tracked him down the hallway. She had heard the music before she reached the door. She had looked through the gap. She had seen Ethan on the piano bench beside that small, scruffy little girl. She had seen the way his face looked, open, wondering, something she hadn't seen on him in months. She had seen it all. And her first thought had not been, that child is extraordinary. Her first thought had been, this is a problem. In the study, when Ethan had confronted her about what she had said to Lily, Vanessa had done what she always did when cornered. She explained. She contextualized. She made it reasonable. I simply felt it was inappropriate for staff's children to wander through guest areas, Ethan. It's a legitimate concern. You told a 3-year-old to get on her knees and clean your shoes. I may have been overly firm. I'll apologize to the mother. Vanessa. Something in his voice made her go still. My mother cleaned houses, he said. I've told you that. Yes, darling. And it's a wonderful. Her hands looked exactly like Rosa's hands. He had looked at her steadily. When you said what you said to Lily, what did you see when you looked at that little girl? Vanessa had paused. And in that pause, that fraction of a second too long, Ethan had gotten his answer. She had seen nothing. No one important. Nothing worth consideration. They had returned to the party. Ethan had walked slowly. And something between them had shifted in a way that couldn't be shifted back. Now in the hallway, Vanessa made her choice. She pulled out her phone. She found the estate manager's number. I need you to arrange for Rosa and her daughter to vacate their room tonight, she said quietly. Find somewhere else for her to stay or release her from the position. The child is a disruption. Pause on the other end. Tonight, Ms. Hartwell. Mr. Callaway hasn't. I'm the one making this request. Please handle it. She hung up. She smoothed her dress. She went back to her party with a smile on her face. But she had forgotten something. The estate manager had worked for Ethan Callaway for 7 years. He had a standing instruction, one that Ethan had given on his very first day. Anything that affects the staff comes to me directly. Always. The estate manager sent one message. And Ethan's phone vibrated in his pocket. Rosa didn't know any of this yet. She was sitting in the sitting room, watching her daughter lean against Ethan Callaway's arm. Half asleep from the lateness of the hour, rabbit clutched to her chest. Ethan hadn't moved. Hadn't asked them to leave. He had simply stayed, one arm gently steadying the drowsy child, looking at the piano with an expression Rosa couldn't read. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His jaw tightened just barely. He looked at Rosa. I need to handle something, he said quietly. Stay here. Both of you. Don't go anywhere. Rosa frowned. Is everything? Stay here, he said again. Gently, but absolutely certain. Please. He stood carefully, transferring the sleeping weight of Lily back to Rosa, and walked out of the room. Rosa held her daughter and looked at the door. What just happened? She didn't know. But something had changed in the air of the house. Something had shifted, and she didn't know yet whether it was going to save them or destroy them. Have you ever made a decision out of pride or fear that you instantly regretted? Do you think Vanessa knew, somewhere deep down, what she was really choosing that night? By midnight the party was over. By morning, nothing in that house would look the same, for any of them. The guests left by 11. The string quartet packed up. The champagne flutes were cleared. The candles burned low. Vanessa had retired to the East Wing with the calm confidence of someone who had handled a problem and moved on. Ethan had not come to bed. Rosa had fallen asleep in the sitting room armchair with Lily curled in her lap. When she woke at 2 in the morning, stiff-necked and disoriented, she found a soft blanket had been laid over both of them. On the low table beside her, a glass of water and a plate of crackers. She sat there in the dark for a long moment. Then she noticed the envelope. It was on the table beside the water. Her name, Rosa, written on the outside in careful handwriting. She picked it up. Inside were 2 things. The first was a letter. Rosa, I owe you an apology. Not for tonight only. For every day that this house made you feel like you and your daughter needed to be invisible. That should never have been the case. It was never my intention, and I am sorry I didn't see it sooner. The second thing in this envelope is not charity. I want to be very clear about that. It is an opportunity, and you are free to refuse it. My company runs a music scholarship program. We fund young musicians. Lessons, instruments, support, from the age of 4. We have never considered a candidate this young. I have also never heard a 3-year-old do what your daughter did tonight. I've made some calls. There is a music teacher I trust, the best in the city. She has agreed to meet Lily next week. No pressure. No obligation. Whatever you decide, your position here is secure. Permanently. And your room will be upgraded to the guest apartment in the East Wing, starting tomorrow. You and Lily deserve a proper home. One more thing, and I hope this doesn't overstep. My mother's name was Maria. She cleaned houses for 20 years. She had hands like yours. She never once complained. She was the most extraordinary person I have ever known. I think her spirit would have liked your daughter very much. Ethan. Rosa read the letter twice. Then she pressed it against her chest and closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She was past the kind of tired that cries. She was in the deeper place. The place where relief feels like your bones going soft, like something you've been carrying for years finally being set down. Lily stirred in her lap. Mama. I'm here, baby. Is it morning? Almost. Lily settled back into her. Mama. The big piano. Yes. Can I play it again tomorrow? Rosa pressed her lips to the top of her daughter's head. Those wild curls. That warm, sleepy weight. Yes, she whispered. I think you can. In the East Wing, Vanessa woke at 8 to find Ethan's side of the bed empty. She found him in the dining room, dressed, coffee in hand, looking out at the garden. Good morning, she said. Good morning. She poured herself coffee, sat across from him. Something in the air was careful and very still. I've been thinking, Ethan said, about the kind of home I want to build. Vanessa looked at him. I've been thinking about what I want the people in my life to have in common, he continued. The things I can't compromise on. Ethan. I asked the estate manager about the call you made last night. Silence. She asked him to remove Rosa and Lily from their room, he said. Last night. During the party. He looked at Vanessa steadily. After everything. Vanessa set down her coffee cup. I made a judgment call, she said. The situation was disrupting. Vanessa. His voice was quiet. Final. I told you about my mother. You did. And when you looked at that little girl last night, that 3-year-old in her yellow dress, you saw something that needed to be removed. He paused. I saw my mother's hands. The dining room was very quiet. Outside birds. Morning light on the garden. Somewhere in the house, faint and small and impossibly lovely, the sound of piano keys. 3 notes. Building. Repeating. They both heard it. Vanessa's face was very still. Ethan stood. I'll have my lawyers contact yours, he said quietly. He wasn't cruel about it. He wasn't dramatic. He was simply certain, the way he was certain about everything that mattered. I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't build a life with someone who looks at a child and sees a problem. He left the room. Vanessa sat alone at the long table with her coffee going cold. And from somewhere in the house, Lily played on. 3 years later, the concert hall was sold out. It was a modest hall, not the grand stages that would come later, but every seat was filled and the audience was still, the way audiences go still when something real is happening in front of them. On the stage, a small girl, 6 years old now, no longer a toddler, but with the same wild curls and enormous brown eyes, sat at a grand piano. She played for 18 minutes. When she finished, no one moved for 3 full seconds. Then the hall erupted. In the 3rd row, Rosa sat with her hands clasped and her face open and completely undone. Beside her sat Ethan Calloway, not as her employer anymore, but as her friend, one of the few real ones she had made in this city, watching the stage with the expression of someone witnessing something they know they will carry for the rest of their life. Rosa leaned over. She's going to be extraordinary, she whispered. Ethan smiled. She already is, he said. On the stage, Lily stood and bowed. She was looking for one face in the crowd. When she found her mother, she smiled, wide and real and completely unself-conscious. The exact same smile she'd had at 3 years old when she'd pressed that first piano key and heard the sound it made. Pure wonder. Pure joy. She had always known the music was there. She had just needed someone to let her play. There are people walking through our world right now, cleaning our floors, invisible to us, dismissed, overlooked, and some of them are carrying extraordinary things. Talents, dignity, stories. Not every gift comes wrapped in wealth. Not every talent announces itself from a stage. Sometimes it arrives in a faded yellow dress, with a stuffed rabbit and bare feet, pressing a single piano key in a room where no one expected anything. The question isn't whether these gifts exist. The question is whether we have the eyes to see them. Here is what I want to leave with you today. Is there someone in your life you have been looking past? Someone you've reduced to a role, a background detail, a problem to be managed, instead of a person with a whole world inside them? What would change if you looked at them the way Ethan looked at Lily? If this story moved you even just a little, hit that like button. Takes 1 second and it means everything. Drop a comment below. I want to know, what part hit you the hardest? And where in the world are you watching from? Subscribe if you're new, because every week we bring you stories exactly like this one. Stories about ordinary people carrying extraordinary things. Stories that remind us what actually matters. And share this one because somewhere out there someone needs to hear it today. I'll see you in the next one.